Hey, what's happening, guys? Dan Darrow here with another Options and Play video update. So, I'm going to cut right to the chase here because this is going to be an absolutely jam-packed video. We have uh, really a big week of earnings in store for us. And when you kind of mix in the FOMC decision on Wednesday, the jobs report on Friday, we're just setting up for a wild one. And I'm super excited. This past week there was a ton of opportunity, a ton of things flying around. I'm really expecting like another just wild week. So without further ado, AMG Monday morning. Um, may or may not be familiar. It's a kind of a beaten up asset manager. It has some similarities to State Street, which just reported and rallied. It's priced in about 6.5. Got rocked last quarter here. It's not really a name that I typically trade, but State Street STT had kind of like a similar setup and it rebounded. A lot of financials are performing a little bit better, so maybe you could take like a more speculative shot on the bull side just to see if it bounces. Maybe you can get back into like the 100 or low 100s in that range. But this is probably the only really interesting one on Monday. After the close, this can't imagine anybody's going to be talking about this on Monday, right? Looking for just a 40-point move, which seems crazy, but it moved 50 last quarter, and it's basically doubled since then. So it's going to be madness. I have no idea what to make of it. I really don't. It's a pretty quick turnaround. I mean, not even like, well, just I guess basically just about 2 months exactly from when it last reported. Stock is parabolic, heavy short interest. People are just chasing it. Valuations are just ridiculous. The fundamentals don't really even matter at this point. So, I mean, betting on earnings and revenues. I mean, it's not like anybody's really like trading it off of that. So I probably going to avoid it personally, but maybe look at some sort of longer term bear position after. Just thinking like this has to come down to earth eventually. Plus you got the lockup looming in a couple months, so that's what I'm thinking. But I mean, this is going to be crazy. Illumina. So this one is priced in 15 points, which seems a little high to me because they already guided. This one got smashed. And they already guided. So typically you don't really expect like a huge move after that. And plus the options are kind of in line with what it's been averaging recently, so it seems kind of strange that they're that expensive still. I think this one's developing as a short swing. I like a little bit more of a consolidation, but overall, man, I'm looking for like a pretty significant break below this 300 support range. So um, probably still gonna kind of wait it out. I'd like to see like maybe a little bit more of a consolidation, and then looking for like a deeper retracement down to like 270s. Overall, that's what I'm thinking. NXPI, so 75 or so. That's what they're expecting here. Kind of a forgotten semi. Really, after the merger fell through, didn't get a lot of attention. Coming back though, and it's hanging above 100 again. And you can see, like the further back I go, that still some room back to where it was. When it was still in that merger talks, and you know, options are a little bit more on the high side, considering what this has moved just in the past few quarters since that merger like broke. Um, but I feel like it could work its way higher, but maybe like a calendar spread, right? Something to take advantage of the higher near term premium in favor of like a longer term swing. Plus the chip stocks have been acting great, so I feel like this maybe it's set to work its way higher, but in terms of like premium this week, maybe a little bit more on the high side. Tuesday before the Open. All right, GLW. This one's a pretty good go-to earnings trade just because it's so consistent. Well, it's such a consistent mover. It's not consistent price-wise, as you can see, up, down, but it consistently moves, which is always a great thing when you're playing these types of catalysts. So, priced it at 2 points. Consistently a mover. Consistently moves greater than what they're pricing in most of the time too. Kind of bumping up underneath like this longer term area of resistance, and could be a pretty big pent up breakout if it's good. On the downside, maybe like 30, low high 20s. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? So that's definitely one to keep an eye on. Grubhub, about 8.5 points is what's expected. I don't really know what to make of it. Um, the last couple quarters, just so you can see here, last couple quarters, just really big reversals. So it got smashed back in October, but um, February report wasn't good, had a huge reversal. April was okay, but then had a huge reversal lower. So a lot of like mixed action on earnings, not a lot of decision. Stock hasn't really been going anywhere. So just kind of like a tougher name at the moment. Option pricing isn't too bad, but that's also because it hasn't really, it hasn't really had that consistent move over the last few months. I mean, if anything, maybe it's like a speculative bet. Maybe, you go a little bit further out of the money. I feel like I still kind of lean bearish on this just because of the price action in the last couple quarters, still below moving averages. But I mean, this just seems like an overall kind of a tough setup this time for Grub. IPGP, one you guys might not be familiar with, but it's going to be a week for the lasers because you also have Coherent next week. It's priced in at about 15 points, and it kind of trades with the semis, loosely, but it hasn't come back nearly as far as the chip stocks have, and they haven't guided early too, which is a little bit positive because lately they guided early a couple times, and the guidance have been pretty bad. The problem with IPGP is that it's coming off 4 misses in a row, so not exactly the best streak, but each time it seems like kind of like increasingly like short-lived sell-off. So back in October, right? February. So missed in October, rebounded, missed in February, bounced, then missed in April and bounced too. So it seems like people are willing to get into the name, but they kind of just need like a clean beat and raise. But I mean, it could really rocket. It has room to run if they can actually turn in like a decent, like beat or inline guidance. So something to keep an eye on. MasterCard, 10 points is what's priced in. I mean, Visa, AXP, both really lackluster reactions. They had similar charts going in, lackluster reactions after reporting. So thinking the same thing here. Probably looking for more muted volatility overall. It's definitely going to be an avoid for me. Under Armour, one of the first big retail names. 275 is what they're looking for. Coming off a strong quarter, and stock has been acting great, and it's still kind of got room into this gap from way back when. So still got like room up to like the 30 range. Seems like things are setting up for higher prices, but I just don't know if there's a ton of room on top of that 275 what options are pricing in. So we'll probably have to get risk down a bit somehow. So maybe like spread wise. All right, Tuesday after the close, the main event, Apple, and options are about 9.5. Not quite back to where it was like right in the aftermath of earnings, back at the beginning of April, beginning of May. But it's, kind of steadily working its way back up there, within striking distance of that. And then I mean, 9.5 would put it through that, and then up into like the 220 area, and then could be a hop, skip, and a jump to like grind to the high. I feel like expectations are actually still pretty low on this, and there hasn't been any ugly warnings from the suppliers yet. So I feel like bullish is the way to go. Still hasn't closed the November gap, so 222. So that seems like it might be like an upside target. So thinking, maybe some sort of like longer dated spread, just because if it is good, maybe it grinds, it keeps grinding, gets back into that $1 trillion club. AMD also Tuesday after the close, 3.5 points. That's what's expected. Definitely one of the best chip stocks right now. Look at this chart, just kind of bumping up into like this high here. It's at a 52-week high though, so expectations are definitely more elevated. Had a muted move last quarter, which gives me a little bit more hesitation into this print. But I like the action overall, and maybe it's worth like a speculative, like out of the money bet, just in case it pops and runs. But overall, I mean, it could be one that might be a little bit better of an opportunity on a pullback. Akamai, another name. So 5.5 points. What's priced in. Kind of interesting setup. Had a nice quarter back in April, a little bit off that level still. But you can see it's like hanging right above the top of long-term resistance. Last quarter was pretty good. Numbers have been better recently. Definitely been a mover in the past too. So if it's another good quarter, maybe this has a date with the 90s. EA. Okay, so 575 is what's priced in. Definitely a tough call because it's hanging right underneath like key support. Stock has been acting miserable. It's finished red 3 out of the last 4 quarters. It definitely looks set up for a breakdown, but dips have been bought pretty aggressively on this, especially in this area. So I don't really have a read on it. Probably gonna be an avoid, but you could maybe look at like a sympathy trade on like Activision or Take Two, right? Because like those sometimes respond to like EA's numbers, so you could maybe like look to play it through those. Zendesk, another name. So 9.5 points. Just solid trending software name. Been an aggressive uptrend, but maybe not as steep as some of the others. Um, Still at its high though, but the valuation isn't too bad. Um, this has overall been a little bit tougher pattern to get paid out of. But I like the name, and I feel like it could go higher. It's just whether like people like kind of chase it. It's that's been like a tougher bet recently. So you know, seems like it could go higher, but I mean might give like that quick dip like a lot of these names do um, before they want to go. GE. All right. So Wednesday before the open, this will be an interesting one. The old dinosaur. 65 cents is what's priced in. Right at the top of resistance. Right. It really has room either way. Technically, I mean, up to like maybe like 11 and a half on the upside, down maybe to like nine, low nines and downside. Seems like room either way. Been kind of range bound. Been a consistent mover, so I'm thinking some sort of volatility strategy, strangle or straddle, trying to take advantage of like the tighter consolidation and the typical movement. Hess is also Wednesday, so 275 is what's priced in. One of the first big E&P reports on the week, and that it's really only interesting to me for that reason. It's just that it's one of the first big E&P reports, and there's going to be a couple big ones that week. So uncertainty is definitely higher, but the chart doesn't look great, but it is one of the first, so maybe you get a bigger move just because no one really knows what to expect just yet. Spotify, kind of an interesting bullish setup. 10.5 points is what's priced in. Definitely showing some positive action. You can see it kind of leaning on the top of like this resistance range. Um, it Unfortunately it hasn't really been a great earnings story. It hasn't been rewarded a lot when it's reported, and options definitely aren't cheap either at like 10.5. But maybe it's worth like a speculative bullish bet just in case it pops and breaks out because there is like some open space to run here. But it really hasn't been a name in play. It hasn't been a great earnings story, but it is an interesting chart. So it's worth keeping an eye on just for that reason alone. SSYS. So it's all about that 30 level. All about 30. Right? If it gets through 30, it could really crank. If it fails, basically every time it's failed, it's rolled over into like the mid to low 20s. So really well-defined range. 3 points is what's priced in, and it's basically if it breaks out, it could really take off. If it breaks down, it could really sink. So it's all basically a bet on which way it goes, and if it really goes with some authority, because it could have much greater than a 3 point move in either direction. Um, so it's thinking some sort of volatility strategy on that one. All right, after the close Wednesday, we have Lamb. So chip stock, it's run a ton. Right, it's one of these semi suppliers, just up really sharply ahead of this. It's been a crazy couple weeks for these guys. 15 points is what's priced in, and I just feel like it's very extended. Options appear expensive. Expectations definitely are higher, and like Xilinx, kind of runs into the report. Numbers are only okay, and it kind of like drops back, right? So I just don't see a trade. It's probably going to be a void. What I will say though, like you have Lam this coming week, you have STX this coming week, you have Western Digital this coming week, so Micron could be a decent sympathy trade on those. Oxy, another one, another EMP name. It's about 215 or so is what they're expecting here. It's I haven't really done a whole lot with names that have like I haven't done a lot with like the EMP names recently. It's just because the action hasn't been great. Um, this one looks interesting just because it's been so demolished since the Anadarko deal, right? There's been a lot of drama around it. It's off its low, it's way off its high. Sometimes these merger deals, they kind of make earnings a little bit more of a muted event, but it seems that it seems that at the two like 15 with the price in, like there could potentially be $4 like either way, like up to like the 55 area or to retest the 47 range. So maybe there's still some room. Just it's one of the more interesting ones, just for that reason, just because the performance has been so bad. Qualcomm. Here's another interesting one, right? 475. So what the options are expecting. It's kind of a roller coaster couple months there. Continues to be in the news pretty steadily too, right? It's had a couple tails, a couple weird reversals. Options aren't too bad pricing wise, but it's you're kind of like gauging whether like earnings are going to move the needle much. It seems like it's all like settlement news, and it seems like there's like outside headlines moving Qualcomm versus like the earnings and the revenue story. So I don't really know what to do with it. Options aren't too bad though. I mean, if that's a name you really have some conviction on, option pricing isn't too bad. So Western Digital, like I just mentioned, 5 points is what's priced in, but kind of the same thing as Lamb, just a massive run, very extended, and probably going to be in a void for it. Twilio, speaking of massive runs, thing is up just an incredible amount year to date. Just unbelievable grind higher. The numbers have been just crazy revenue growth. The price in 14 points this quarter, and the problem with Twilio is that it just really hasn't been getting rewarded for like the good earnings recently. Sold off last quarter, sold off the quarter before that. So it's two quarters in a row where it got hit even after beating. It's like this is the pattern in these software stocks. I mean, they're really tough setups, but if you get the dip, they've been some good opportunities. So it's probably going to wait, see if there's a pullback. Thursday before the open, Clovis. So here's a small cap bio. 2 points is what's priced in. Actually, it's a pretty busy week for bios, pharma. I didn't even mention a lot of the bigger names because the action hasn't been great now. But I mean, you have like Pfizer, Merck, Lilly, Gilead, Amgen. You have a pretty big week of bios, but this is actually one of the more interesting setups, I think, just because the stock has been decimated, trading at its worst price years, and it's just a minuscule market cap. They have a drug on the market, which is actually doing okay. It seems like this could be set up for like a pretty big squeeze if it's good, but I mean, I definitely acknowledge that it could still have more downside, even as far down as it's fallen. I'm thinking, a name that's gotten crushed, high short interest. It seems like it could be set up well for a pretty big move. So some sort of like straddle or strangle on that one. Crocs. This has been a kind of like an interesting earnings play over the past year. Pricing at about 3 points this time. Well off its high, well off its low. It's been a pretty consistent mover, which is great. Like consistently, up or down. Definitely moves. So I feel like you might have like 5 points either way, right? Like so, back up into like the high 20s, back down into like the high teens if it's negative. So kind of like that one for volatility strategy as well. Duncan. So Starbucks, McDonald, both had solid reports today, and Duncan's been acting great. The pricing at 4 points this time around. I guess I'd be thinking bullish, but the problem is just kind of like gauging whether expectations are just super high after Starbucks, right? And the run it's been on. So I'm thinking good news might be kind of priced in on this, even though the chart does still look pretty good. It's been kind of stair stepping higher. It's just, it just seems like people are probably like very, very one-sided on this right now. Kellogg. Okay, so kind of like an under-the-radar play here. It's you can see like kind of bumping up into like this long-term area of resistance. The staples, so like this and Kraft Heinz have really been lagging. And it's kind of pushing up into this long-term area of resistance. So it could be set up for a pretty big breakout if the numbers are good. 3.5 points is what the options are saying. Definitely kind of at that make or break point on the chart, right? Um, and I guess I'd lean maybe a little bit more positive just because of the recent action, and it seems like there could be a little bit more potential if it breaks out above 60. So that's one to keep your eye on, kind of like something under the radar. Shopify. So this one's definitely not under the radar. Pricing in 28 points, just been absolutely on fire. Just straight up. Uh, it's looks like a handful of other software stocks charts, going into earnings, and I mean expectations are just crazy high. Performance has been ridiculous. Definitely going to be an avoid for me. I mean, this is just falls into that category of just see if there's a pullback, and if not, I mean it just seems like a real tough trade to like lay out the money for the catalyst. Wayfair. So 17.5 points is what's priced in here. It's been range bound for a few months, kind of ticking below the bottom of that 140 range, right? Um, Coming off a disappointing quarter, and it's been a tough name. It's been a tough name because it's one of those names where it just seems like it's Teflon. Like the numbers can be bad and it doesn't really get hit too hard. Versus like if they really crush it, it like rips. So it's kind of like unpredictable. Options at like 17 and a half or a little bit more on the high side. So it's they're not giving any deals there. I'd say after the way the May report played out, maybe you lean a little bit more on the bear side, but at the same time, it's just been it's been so resilient, even though they've disappointed in the past. It's tough to not really know what to do with it. Obviously, a really really clear gap underneath though. That's about 20 points lower. So if it does get hit, you could get about 20 bucks down to close that gap. So it's something to keep an eye on. Yeti. Just been a great performing IPO, right off the 52-week high. 5 points is what they're expecting. Ran into the report last quarter and got hit after, even though numbers are pretty good. Running into the report again. So I feel like expectations are definitely on the high side, but maybe this time's different, right? Maybe they beat and it continues running. Um, so maybe like a speculative shot is worth it just to see if things kind of get crazy, right? If you get like the breakout on the run and like the squeeze, these IPOs sometimes can go bonkers. So maybe it's worth like a little bit more of a speculative bet, but it did sell off after running into the report last quarter, so definitely something to keep an eye on. Whew, man, well, told you it's a lot. All right, Thursday after the close, Arista. 24 points is what's priced in here. Actually, those options seem kind of underpriced to me. It moved about 60 last quarter after a surprisingly light guide, and it hasn't really been able to do much damage into that gap. So kind of like hanging here. Still has a huge gap above, way off its low from June. This thing really moves. I mean, just in the last like week, it's had several days of, like averaging about 15 points. So 24 points on an earnings report seems like there could be some room there. It actually seems like it could be like a bounce back quarter candidate. Like a stock that was on like a really good run, slipped up. So maybe if they can like deliver, you get like a really strong surge into that gap. So that's what I'm thinking might be like a bounce back quarter candidate on Arista. Etsy. That's a really nice tight bull flag setup here. So last quarter was actually the first that it got hit in a while. The price hit in 8 points this time around, which is it's not too bad. A little bit more in line with what it's moved, but I feel like it's just like a really nice bull setup because even though it got hit last quarter, the numbers weren't bad. Just kind of like in line-ish. So just like a tight flag underneath 70 resistance, if they're good, maybe you get like a pent up move into like the high 70s, 80 area. So I'm thinking bullish on that one. FTNT. So 7 points was priced in here. This one doesn't get like a lot of attention, but it's a pretty good chart because it has like this really clean gap. Got hit pretty hard after last quarter. But overall, it was one of like the top performing like cyber names. So yeah, I feel like if they can deliver, you get like a really obvious gap, and then before you know it, you're like right at the high again. So maybe you get like kind of like a couple things going if they can put together a decent bounce back. A decent bounce back from last quarter. You got really obvious target in the low 90s and then a 52-week high in like the mid 90s. So I feel like that might set up well on the bull side. Plus the options aren't too bad. Herbalife. Piers, New Skin, and USNA both just warned pretty bad warnings too. This thing is underneath all near-term moving averages, sitting right above like a big area of support. I don't know if bad news is priced in, but it definitely looks like it wants lower prices. Everything seems to be indicating lower on this, so it's just whether it keeps sinking into the numbers and ends up being priced in, or if it kind of hangs out here, maybe there still could be another move lower below 40. Tandem. So this one's kind of one of those bonkers growth names. It's a medtech name, so it's not software, but it's been range bound for a while since like that March pop, right? 7 points is what's priced in. I feel like the range just indicates there could be 10 points, right? So you got a pretty clean area underneath down like the low 50s, right? Underneath 60, and then you got a pretty clean area of resistance up in the low 70s. So just right there, that's 10 points. And then if it breaks either side, I mean, that's significantly more. So pricing in 7, chart indicates 10. So I'm thinking volatility strategy on that one. Square. 5.5 points is what's priced in. So I love this setup into the report, but Square has been absolutely brutal around earnings. It tends to get hit, whether they beat or miss. Well, if they miss, it gets hit. But it just does not respond well to earnings. I mean, that's the pattern. I mean, just gets hit, and then it'll bounce back quick, but then it'll get hit. I mean, it just does not get rewarded on the upside typically. But I mean, you just look at the chart. I mean, it just looks like it could absolutely explode above 82, 83 area. So going with historical, like I feel like you got to be a little bit more cautious, just because it doesn't tend to respond well. But maybe it's worth kind of like a more out of the money like speculative bet, just because if it does get through 82, I mean, it's just such a clean open chart that this thing could really, really, really take off. I mean, I like trading Square. I just hate the way it typically responds to earnings overall. All right, Pinterest, also Thursday after the close. First report was a dud back here. They're pricing in 275 this time around. It really hasn't been able to bounce, and I feel like you would need like a strong print to get some momentum back, and I'd prefer to wait and see if they actually deliver, because I've seen a lot of hot IPOs break and just take a long time to come back. So I would not give Pinterest benefit of the doubt. I want to see them deliver a strong quarter. I want to see this thing get up through 30, and then maybe I get back on board for a trade, because after disappointing the first time around, they definitely don't get the benefit of the doubt this time around. All right, last but not least, Friday before the open. So Chevron looking for about 3.25, and Exxon, which is $1.75. So I'm kind of lumping these two E&P names together. Chevron's definitely been much better than Exxon performance-wise, but I'll be honest, like neither chart really looks too compelling. Exxon even less so. But I'd say if I had to choose one, I might do Exxon, even though the chart's not as compelling, because it's been more of a consistent mover on earnings. Especially like at $1.75, it's tended to move more than that. So if I had to choose one, I feel like I might go with Exxon, but I'm not really sure if I'm going to do either, to be honest. And then STX, so 375 is what they're pricing in, and it hasn't had as aggressive of a move as like Western Digital or Micron or Lam. So the chart's a little bit different, but at the same time, I feel like these things have all kind of run. Expectations were a lot higher, so I still think like the way to play it was with Micron, because obviously Micron already reported options are a little bit cheaper. So if they're going to move, maybe Micron will move with it, and you can get like a better deal on the options. All right. Oh man, I need a breather after that. Just a ton of names. It's going to be a jam-packed week. Fed on Wednesday, jobs report on Friday. So rest up, relax, and get ready, because it's going to be a wild one. All right. Have a wonderful weekend, and I will talk to you guys all on Monday.